if you are not getting enough sleep, if you are trying to do everything, if you are caught up in this idea that you have to be perfect, that everybody else is doing it and that you're not, if you are feeling an enormous amount of mommy guilt or daddy guilt because you can't keep it all together, that doesn't mean that you have some sort of disorder. It means that we are in a period right now in our society where we are absolutely overwhelmed with so many things.
Welcome to Season 6 of Flusterclux with Lynn Lyons, where we talk about a family's anxiety and all the big feelings, too. We tackle the serious stuff without being too serious, and I'm your co-host, Robin. I'm Lynn's sister-in-law, and I'm here to ask your questions.
And I'm Lynn Lyons. I'm an anxiety expert, speaker, mom, and author, and I've been a therapist for over 30 years. Parenting can be a Flusterclux, and I'm here to help you find your way. I'll give you concrete steps to take and the words to say. Okay, everybody, welcome to the 6th season of Flusterclux.
Woohoo!
Woohoo! Yeah, we've been doing this for a while now, haven't we?
Yeah, not actually 6 years because we didn't know in the beginning how to count seasons the right way. But no, the last few seasons have been full school years.
Yeah, I still don't really know how to count seasons.
That's okay, I do.
Okay, I know. That's why you're in charge of such things. Yeah, I just show up.
Okay, so we're going to start this season for you parents.
This is for you, parents. Listen up.
Yep.
The reason we want to start this season for parents is because there's just a lot of stuff floating around. And we talk so much, of course, about mental health in kids. And we've heard so much about the mental health crisis and how kids are struggling and teens are struggling. But man, is there a lot of stuff coming at the adults as well, which I think we need to talk about.
Yeah. There's a lot of trend around moms thinking that they have ADHD. And I can tell you, I saw something on Instagram that sort of stood for everything you despise. I was shocked. But I guess because I haven't ventured that much into mental health influencers, but a very, very well-known one, not for young people, but for moms like us, like a super duper popular influencer was saying, do you, mom, have undiagnosed ADHD? And she proceeded to list and ask questions that I swear one was like, can you concentrate for an extended amount of time in one setting, but not in another? Do you feel that you enjoy impulsive shopping? It was like, do you have ovaries? It was just like a stupid, stupid quiz. And I was like, okay, so every woman who finishes this little quiz is going to say, yes, I am that person, because it was so general.
Yeah.
And then everyone thinks that they have ADHD. So please help us stop this madness.
So you saw that. And at the same time that you saw that, I was actually completing an article that I've just written about this trend of self-diagnosis. And the article is about self-diagnosis in a lot of ways, but certainly a big part of the article was about this very thing, about women and ADHD and self-diagnosis.
Did you say you took a quiz on this?
The way the article came to fruition is that I was at a conference, sitting having breakfast with some colleagues, and a colleague of mine and he works at a very well-known college in Cambridge, Massachusetts. We went on a rant about this. And we were overheard, and then I got a call. Would you like to put this rant into an article? So that's how it all came to be. But yes, I took a quiz, one of the online quizzes of, do you have ADHD? And it said things like, do you lose track of your thoughts? Do you have to move around after sitting still for a period of time? Do you feel anxious at times? And I purposely hit sometimes for every response. So of all these questions, it was never, all the time, sometimes. I just went through and hit sometimes. And I immediately got the results of my quiz into my inbox. And guess what? I have ADHD combined type. And it told me that I could purchase my full report and my 30-day online program. I've been getting emails from them ever since just to see how long they're going to hang in there with me. One of the emails says, it turns out that a lot of female users with the same score as you were able to significantly reduce their ADHD symptoms.
Wait, and just for clarity,
I don't have ADHD.
you don't have ADHD.
No. I mean, I got a lot of things. Talk about bones and I lose consciousness, right? That's an issue. but I don't have ADHD. But as I was reading this, I was just looking at the questions and I was thinking, how many exhausted moms, how many women who are trying to work and get their kids to school and get their kids to daycare, and how do we manage smartphone use, which is something we're going to talk about in a later episode, and all this stuff. How do we not feel overwhelmed? How do we not feel like we're losing track of things? Just sort of struck home is that the more that we are telling women that there's something wrong with them, the more that we're kind of missing the opportunity to actually address the bigger picture of what's going on in our lives as parents.
I think it's important to stop and say there's a reason why so many women are seeking an answer to what's wrong with me, in air quotes, because most women do feel overwhelmed, spread thin, sleep deprived, not as connected as they would like to be socially because the volume of things they have to do prevent them from doing that. I mean, most women are not living a life that feels super balanced. That's just the truth. However, I think people think everyone else is living that life but them.
Look, I want to be very clear, like ADHD is a real thing and people have ADHD, and depression is a real thing and people get depressed, and anxiety is a real thing and people have anxiety disorders. That's what I do for a living. My beef is that when we put these quizzes out there that list these symptoms that so many of us are experiencing, and that you think, oh, well, this diagnosis explains everything. When I'm writing an article, I'm always doing research. So I always learn a lot when I write an article. I just want to tell you about this one research study that I found. It was in 2021, still sort of in the COVID place. But in this study, 74% of mothers say that it is their primary responsibility to manage their children's schedules and activities.
While also working a job and managing a home.
Correct. On top of all their other household duties and their work outside the home. And my friend who I was talking to when we were going on this rant, he's younger than I am. So his peers are right in this age group of raising children, school-age children. He said that more and more of his friends, his peers, are saying, oh my gosh, I think I have adult ADHD. So I think that when we look at the setup, when we look at what is going on in our culture, the pressure that we're under, the amount of perfectionism that we're assaulted with, the idea that everybody else is managing this and balancing this, I think that a lot of women in particular are saying, oh my gosh, there must be something wrong with me because I can't manage the way that everybody else is. And the truth of it is that everybody else is not. You know, we're not all feeling great about how overwhelmed and overworked and distracted and worn out and sleep deprived that we are right now. We did an episode way back when, I don't even know what season it was in, about diagnoses and what happens next if your child gets a diagnosis of anxiety or a diagnosis of depression. And I was very clear in that episode. I remember trying to be very clear in that episode about the fact that getting a diagnosis of anxiety doesn't mean there's something wrong with you, and it doesn't mean that it's a permanent thing. Being depressed doesn't mean that there's something wrong in your brain that can never be fixed, and it's who you are. And I think that when I see these quizzes in magazines that talk about this diagnosis you get, I think that a lot of times the way it's presented is that, oh, you've got this significant problem. You've got something wrong with you. This is who you are. And then what do you do about it? Well, the quizzes don't really give you a whole lot of information about what to do next.
We're going to take a break, but when we come back, we should actually talk about how these quizzes have trended over decades and how these same quizzes really existed when we were kids, but they were asking different questions.
All right.
Thrive Market is my go-to for all my grocery and household essentials, and the convenience of getting it all quickly shipped to my doorstep is a huge time saver. As a Thrive Market member, I save money on every single order. On average, I save over 30% each time.
The convenience is so great, but also just remember that they have so many products to choose from. Like, I love Amy's soups. They have wonderful variety. And also, I'll tell you, My husband loves the Applegate bacon. He would marry a BLT if he could. Their bacon is so great. It's just got the stuff that I need.
Whether you're looking for certified gluten-free snacks or non-toxic cleaning essentials, you can curate your own shopping experience with the click of a button and trust that it's made with the highest quality ingredients and sourcing methods.
The savings really add up.
So join Thrive Market today and get 30% off your first order, plus a free $60 gift. So go to thrivemarket.com/Flusterclux for 30% off your first order, plus a free $60 gift.
That's THRIVE market.com/Flusterclux. thrivemarket.com/Flusterclux.
Do you think seeing a therapist would be helpful, but you don't really have time to find one or meet with them or afford them? Well, so try Talkspace. And by doing everything online, Talkspace has made getting the help that you want easy, accessible, and affordable. And sometimes people wait for something bad to happen to talk to a therapist, but don't wait. You can get a therapist through Talkspace, and therapy can help you shift your perspective, find tools to cope in difficult times, and be a guiding light.
Using Talkspace allows you to get an outside perspective, a professional perspective that gives you the support and the information that often is so vital as you're trying to do better in all sorts of ways.
It's incredibly convenient to have your virtual sessions from the comfort of your home because there's no need to commute to appointments or miss time at work or line up childcare in order to attend.
And Talkspace can help you with any specific challenge you might be facing. It is the #1 online therapy platform. The licensed therapists have specialties in anxiety, depression, substance use, relationship issues, and much more.
As a listener of this podcast, you'll get $80 off your first month with Talkspace when you go to Talkspace.com/Fluster. To match with a licensed therapist today, go to Talkspace.com/Fluster. That's Talkspace.com/Fluster. Lynn, can I tell you why I like doing laundry these days?
No, please tell us. I'm sure it's going to be fascinating.
Because I still get that little jolt of happiness and satisfaction when I look at my Earth Breeze laundry sheets. So they look like dryer sheets, but they're not. And it's a liquidless laundry detergent that dissolves 100% in your wash cycle, hot or cold. There's no measuring, and there's no big plastic jug of goo that never recycles.
I was walking in my neighborhood the other day. It was recycling day, and I couldn't help but notice how many huge empty detergent jugs were in everybody's recycling bins. Here's the other reason why I love Earth Breeze is that it really makes your laundry clean and smell great. And Earth Breeze really works.
So join over 2 million Americans making a difference with Earth Breeze.
Yeah, and if you're still not convinced, there is a 100% satisfaction guarantee. If you don't like it, you get a full refund. No questions asked and no return necessary. It is just a great product for so many reasons.
So right now, our listeners can subscribe to EarthBreeze and get 40% off. So go to earthbreeze.com/Flusterclux to get started. And that's earthbreeze.com/Flusterclux for 40% off.
earthbreeze.com/Flusterclux. Okay, we're back.
So, Lynn, you and I are close enough in age that we grew up reading 17 magazine. And then, of course, there was Cosmo and Glamour and all of these kind of Condé Nast and Hearst magazines for young women. And they were very quiz filled.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember some of the topics? Like, are you a jealous girlfriend? Or are you a good best friend? They were somewhat generic.
Yeah. Well, a lot of them were about sex too, right? Like
not in 17.
Yeah. Oh, you didn't take the highlights quiz at the pediatrician's office? Yeah. Just kidding. That was inappropriate. No, you're right. Like it was a lot about relationships and friendships.
Right. It was a social, emotional kind of light stuff about friendships. Well, that lasted, but print magazines aren't subscribed to anymore. Those aren't around. So then there was the trend when online magazines became a thing. And then like the decade of the BuzzFeed quizzes or the Bored Panda quizzes. Then it started getting really into self-categorization. And obviously, mothers of our age group are very familiar with like, are you Samantha, Carrie, Miranda, or Charlotte? Like, which
Yeah,
Sex
right.
and the City character are you, right? I actually refer to this with my daughter a lot, where I always say to her, we're not just one, we are a composite of all of them, so we're like maybe 20% this. And actually, she's not seen Sex in the City. So I put it into a show that we are familiar with.
Gilligan's Island.
We're a portion, and I think people can understand. So stay with me here. So people can understand if they take a quiz, which Harry Potter character are you? Which this or that? Which Hogwarts house are you? People wanted to categorize, oh, this is who I am. So in that context, people sort of understand that they could be quite a few different answers, and they also didn't take it too seriously. Somewhere along the way, all these quizzes became about mental health diagnoses.
And it's much more serious because it's very different if you're deciding that you're more of a Slytherin instead of a Hufflepuff, or you're more like Jan instead of Marcia. But when we're talking about mental health diagnoses, when we're talking about you concluding this about yourself, this is what the whole article that I wrote about, it was about self-diagnosis. It was about coming up with a conclusion that you have this disorder. And one of the things about the social media influencers and the people giving these quizzes is they have no idea what they're talking about. The lists are very vague. Everybody can sort of fit into it and identify themselves. But there's another trend that's happening where it says that how I diagnose myself is the most important thing. Even a mental health professional, there is a trend that says that we're not allowed to question how somebody came to their diagnosis, that becomes insulting, that becomes demeaning, that somehow we are invalidating. So we've got all these quizzes that are out there put out by people like Khloe Kardashian, and then people concluding that if I take this quiz and if I have this disorder, that this is a valid way of me determining who I am. Now also, and again, this is one of the things that I can go on a rant about, but also a lot of these quizzes are supported by pharmaceutical companies. And so there's a very obvious desire for people to come up with a diagnosis that then will result in the purchase of something.
The prescription of something that you request from your primary care physician.
Correct. Or directly from the website that is now selling the prescriptions. With my ADHD quiz that I took, they wanted to sell me my 30-day ADHD plan. They wanted to sell it to me. It wasn't free. I mean, I think your point is so valid. And I think this trend that we're seeing is so important. I love the context that you're putting it in, that it used to just be for fun. Am I Samantha or am I Charlotte? But when we're taking these quizzes and when people are diagnosing themselves or thinking that they have these disorders, it feels good to have that explanation. But remember that it's not just for fun. You really need to look at what's going on in your life in a whole realm of ways, not just based on a quiz that you took because some social media influencer put the quiz online.
Your average teenager takes some sort of influencer-driven quiz and then decides, because they like a neat room, I'm just giving an example, that they have OCD, and that your peers in your field, when that teen says, okay, I have OCD, and then you say, and how did this diagnosis come about? And they say, I took a quiz. Mm-hmm. And you're not supposed to question that?
Well, I don't think that, but there is definitely a trend within younger therapists in training that I am aware of, that if you believe you have it, you do. And so it's happening with autism, it's happening with OCD, it's happening with personality disorders, it's happening with ADHD, that it is really insulting and invalidating to say to somebody, I'm not sure that you have that diagnosis because you determined it yourself or you got it from a quiz online.
Right. We have talked about this in slightly different ways in episodes past, where you have been booed at high schools.
I have.
When you say you're so let's say you actually do, by a therapist, get a diagnosis of depression. Mm-hmm. Then that teenager, or young adult is like, okay, I have depression. I have depression. That is my identity. And you've argued, well, you're presently experiencing depression, but that is not your identity. And we can work to help you move through your depression by increasing certain skills and blah, 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 right? Like that's part of what your therapy is.
Yeah, that's what therapy is, by the way.
That's what therapy is. But yes, of course. Sorry, I'm not a therapist.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
So, but that's the positive outcome.
Right.
But the tendency of young people wanting to say, this is my label, don't mess with my label, and my label is permanent.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want the younger generation to affect the adults with this too, because this is a very bad path to go down.
Correct. And I think that what I'm seeing is I'm seeing it move into adults. This is why you saw that social influencer quiz. I am seeing these adult quizzes. And I think that the tendency or the desire to have some sort of label, which is really common in adolescence. I mean, that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to figure out who you are. So you move through different stages of I'm this, I'm that, right? There's a lot of experimenting, a lot of trying on of identity. I'm seeing it move up into, in particular, like the mom population of really trying to have that label or that identity. The problem with it is that, for one, where are you getting your information? I'm certainly not going to let my profession off the hook because there is a lot of history of us doing this very same thing. But I really want women to hear. I want everybody listening to hear is that if you are feeling, if you are experiencing, if you are struggling with these symptoms that are on these checklists, absolutely, one, you are not alone. Get information about what to do to make it better for you and begin to look at the bigger picture rather than going in and saying, oh, there must be something wrong with my brain, or there must be something wrong with my abilities, or there must be something wrong with this. Look at the bigger picture, because if you are not getting enough sleep, if you are trying to do everything, if you are caught up in this idea that you have to be perfect, that everybody else is doing it and that you're not, if you are feeling an enormous amount of mommy guilt or daddy guilt because you can't keep it all together, that doesn't mean that you have some sort of disorder. It means that we are in a period right now in our society where we are absolutely overwhelmed with so many things. I just don't want people to take this on as, oh, that's what's wrong with me, when it really is such a bigger picture. It's a culture right now. It's an experience right now of being a parent that I think feels so untenable to people. And I don't want them to conclude that it's because there's something wrong with their brain and that it's a permanent thing. I think that's not where the solutions lie. That's my point.
One friend of mine, working mom, very busy, very structured. Her week through the work week, very busy. Weekends, she fills the weekends a lot with a lot of activities too. There was a lot of activity and not a lot of downtime. She sort of hit a wall, like, I'm done. Something's wrong. I'm done. Was going and going and going at this pace. She started paying a really big price for it. She started changing her schedule, changing her work schedule, changing her family schedule, and she started filling in mandatory time for herself in a way that she never had before. And it made all the difference. She has been consistent with that for the last year, and it enabled her to feel much more productive with her work again. It made her have so much more fun with her family again. She was just going, 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 and, for over a decade at this pace, and it caught up to her. Nothing was wrong with her.
Right.
There just wasn't a balance, and she had to work and look at how she was living to understand what she could change and the impact that it had. And I think that that's truthfully like the majority of us, is that we have gotten into a pattern where we're taking on so much that we're burning candles at both ends. I'm just going to share a personal example too, with just by taking the anxiety audit, when we launched that course and really paying attention to the patterns, I keep unpacking them when I think I'm done. And then I love the fact that I revisit and something hits me in a different way. Oh, I do that. When I really understood the root of where I get triggered with an overwhelm pattern at work and I made modifications, and I'm still working on it. It's an ongoing process. If you were to ask my family what my basic mood is most days compared to where it was maybe a year ago, 6 months ago, it's really different. Everyone's going to have overwhelm triggers. So really understanding that, and read Lynn's book if you haven't, read The Anxiety Audit, because it can be such a game changer as it was for me.
A huge change that has sort of dawned on me, it sort of started during the pandemic, but it's continued, is that how did I value, what were some of the things that I thought were really necessary and important that I felt good about that were actually not good for me? One of those things is that I am an early morning exerciser. I had in my head for a really long time, for years and years and years, that sleeping in was sort of like weakness for sissies, right? Sleeping in was for, and I'm talking about like sleeping in till 7. And I still get up and go to the gym, but I only go 3 days a week. I used to teach spinning. The classes started at 5:30. And what happened with me was that I started traveling more and more. So I would get home from a trip. Say I got home at midnight from a flight, and I still had to teach spinning and get up at 4:30 the next morning. And what happened during COVID, of course, is because of everything, my gym closed. I started not setting my alarm, and I really figured out how much sleep my body likes.
She did just say that she taught 5:30 spinning in the morning for years.
For 20 years. I actually quit before COVID. I quit doing that. It became apparent. But that I didn't want to do, 20 years, please. How long can you teach spinning? And then my husband always says, you don't teach spinning. It's not hard. Okay, I led spinning classes. The thing that really has become clear to me is that my body likes and wants more sleep than I had given myself permission for. Or I thought that getting 6 hours sleep was a sign of what? Like a sign of strength, a sign of like, look at me. It was something like one of those things you brag about. I only need this many hours of sleep. That is not the case. And I've really changed that.
Well, the example is not one relatable to many, okay?
Yeah.
Because the very small percentage of the population who's like, yeah, that was a good idea. Because I love going to 5:30 spinning. So even though that example isn't relatable, it's really you had a rigidity about your expectation and that this is the way it was done. And all of us have that rigidity about a few things that we should consider letting go of.
And even more of rigidity for sure, but also just a very skewed value. So maybe my skewed value was if I get less sleep, that says something about me. Like that's a strength of being able to handle less sleep. And I really can, like I can sleep for 4 hours and get up and function, not days in a row. But I think think of perfectionism. I hear people will say, well, one of the things I take pride in is blank. And it could be that their house is always perfect or that this or that. And sometimes those things that we value, those things that we hold as a sign of our strength are actually contributing to answering yes and yes and yes and yes on these questionnaires. If you are sleep deprived, you're not concentrating. You can't focus. If you've got 3 little kids or 2 little kids or even 1 new baby or 3 teenagers, whatever the constellation may be, you are not able to remember things, people, right? I think what we're doing, what women tend to do is that we hold up these things as signs of strength and values that show our competence, that are really making it more likely that when we take one of those ADHD quizzes, we're going to get an email that says, you have ADHD, where it's really like, you aren't sleeping, or you're perfectionistic.
Or you've got 3 kids.
Or you've got 3 kids. Yeah. And you're in a marriage where 74% of you are still taking care of the kids' schedules and the kids' activities and
managing the house and cooking and cleaning.
Right. We see it all the time, not to diss on the men here, but it's pretty consistent. I saw one thing recently where the mom said that she wishes she got as much praise when she took her kids to the grocery store as her husband would get when he took the kids to the grocery store. He's in the grocery store and everybody's like, look at you with your 3 kids at the grocery store. And she's like, oh my God, please. Yeah.
I've mentioned this before, but I really was going to lose it when we were on a plane home and there was a dad with like a 2-year-old and an infant flying somewhere. People treated him like he was a hero, and I expected a parade in the terminal for him when he got off. And it was like, I did that and you did that.
Yep.
Hundreds of times. with no congratulations or aren't you amazing.
And what we did receive, though, which I received and you have received, is the wonderful help of women who looked at us and had been in that very same position and said, can I carry the car seat for you? Right? The thing that I want to convey in this is that I think not only have we gotten to this place where we're holding up these things that we do as sort of badges of honor that are actually exhausting us or that are too much, they feel good. I talk a lot about the lure of perfectionism. But then now the flip side is that now we're diagnosing ourselves with these disorders, with these problems. Like, what's the payoff here? Where is the person saying, yeah, the reason you're so exhausted is because your life is exhausting. And just like your friend, maybe you need to change your schedule. Just like me, maybe you need to stop seeing getting up at 4:30 as a badge of honor and seeing it as, my friend calls, getting up at dark 30 at farmer time. Why are you doing that? I do like to do it a few days a week. I'm not going to deny that. It's a lovely time of day, everyone. But it's not a badge of honor to do it to the point where you're exhausted.
No. Let's take a break and we'll come right back.
Higher education is one of the largest investments people make in their lives. And yet most people enter into that investment with a really incomplete picture of the risks involved. Student loan debt is a big deal right now. But you don't have to be one of the people who gets overwhelmed by the process and by the debt. Thanks to David S. Shuttler's new book, Graduate Debt-Free: Escaping the Student Loan Matrix.
In Graduate Debt-Free, Shuttler combines the warmth and the empathy of a concerned parent with years of meticulous research into every facet of education financing. Graduate Debt-Free offers accessible and practical insights on how selecting a major can influence one's ability to pay off the loans, also the substantially overlooked cost of housing and life on campus, and also the viability of scholarships, community colleges, military service, and other avenues to reducing debt while gaining an education.
It looks at things that we forget to look at, doesn't it? This book is an absolute must-read for high school students who aspire to become college educated while minimizing debt.
Visit graduate-debt-free.com and take the first step to securing a debt-free education by picking up your copy at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and wherever you buy your books. That's graduate-debt-free.com.
Hey everybody, this is Robin at Flusterclux. When Lynn and I are not having a great time recording our podcast on the weekends, I have a day job. I have a travel magazine for families. So if you're thinking about a 2023 family vacation, don't plan anything without reading our guides to the best Disney hotels, the best way to get a Disney guide for less, and everything you need to know about booking a Disney cruise. Lux Recess has been since 2014 the go-to place for parents to read about luxury travel with honest reviews written for parents by parents. Check it out. The links are in the show notes for our best guides to Florida travel for your spring break in 2023. That's luxrecess.com, luxrecess.com.
Okay, so now back to the show.
I have kids who are now older, and Lynn, you're an empty nester now.
I am.
But we have been at different stages of motherhood where we were very overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
We were very sleep deprived.
Mm-hmm.
And things were like harder on a daily basis than they are for us now. But we see all of you who are feeling overwhelmed because I think that's just the name of the game right now for most of us.
I ended up in the hospital with a sinus infection that was so bad that I had to be hospitalized because my kids were little. It was around the holidays. I was trying to do everything. I didn't take the time to go to get my sinus infection treated. I mean, that's why when you say like we see you and overwhelmed and going through parenting, I do this for a living and I am aware of my patterns. But when my kids were 1 and 3 and 2 and 4 and 3 and 5, I was just trying to get through the day. It was really, really hard.
I was sleep deprived for 8 years.
Oh my gosh, my eyes burned all the time. I had contact lenses and my eyes just burned all the time. So I think that we see you, we hear you. I just want to make sure that women who are in this culture that we live in where it is hard to feel as if you've got both feet on the ground. It's hard to feel as if you have balance, that whole idea of balance. But I think I just want to caution all of you of thinking that there's something wrong with you. It doesn't mean that you don't get help. It doesn't mean that you don't figure out, like your friend did, Robin. And she probably had somebody that had to help her do that. I think she got to the point.
She did. She needed somebody else to say, you're doing too much, you've taken on too much, and you're burnt out.
Yeah.
Burnout, especially after the pandemic. This is so common. I think that without everyone truly having, although there are some people who, of course, a therapist would say, no, you really do have ADHD, which is separate. The majority of us have experienced burnout and overwhelm. And overwhelm is, you describe that really as an anxiety pattern that you have. So we're in your territory now. So I bet everyone's feeling overwhelmed who's listening to this. What do you got for us?
Okay. I say this all the time. I'm going to say it again. Small things matter. They add up. And so it's not like you have to overhaul your whole life. It's not like you have to get a new job or get a new house or whatever. Think about the small changes that are also significant changes. Just like your friend said, I'm going to take time for myself in a way that I never took before. If we look at what improves brain function, because that's what we're talking about, how does your brain and your body, how do they function better? You want to pay attention to sleep for sure. Don't be like me. I'm better now. Don't be like me. You want to pay attention to social connection. You want to pay attention to the people that you're spending your time with. Let me just say this. I've been listening to this podcast. This Julia Louis-Dreyfus has been doing this podcast, Wiser Than Me. Have you listened to it, Robin?
No, I'll save it.
Okay, so she talked to a bunch of women, including Jane Fonda, Carol Burnett, Fran Lebowitz, all of these really accomplished women that are in their 80s and 90s. And one of the things at the end, she asked them, what do you wish your younger self knew? A lot of them talked about being more particular about what they said yes to, about paying attention to saying no when they wanted to say no. Carol Burnett said, who's 90, by the way, said it wasn't that she has any regrets that she said yes to things she shouldn't have said yes to. She says that she wishes she had said no to more things. Getting in the habit, getting in the practice of turning things down, of saying no thank you, is really important. Protect your family time, protect your time, and just recognize being giving and generous and all things to all people is a lovely quality to have, but it will wear you out. Being able to say no to things you don't want to do. Paying attention, and again, like I know you're all going to get annoyed with me, but I'm going to say it. Move your body. Move your body. Exercise helps. It helps with depression. It helps with anxiety. Do something that you enjoy. Go out for a walk. Get outside. But get away from this idea that everybody else is doing it better than you, because we're all doing the same thing. And I would say that if you are somebody who is on social media a lot, if you are somebody who tends to use your downtime to scroll Instagram, to look at TikTok, maybe do an experiment and take a 2-week break from all social media and see how that impacts the way that you think and you feel about yourself, about your family. It is incredibly hard for you to feel good about yourself when you are constantly bombarded with images of people supposedly doing it better, about your body, about your house, about your birthday cakes, about your job, about your money. Take a break. See what it's like for you to step back from that stuff. And does that change the way that you think and feel about what you're getting done?
Yeah, I think substituting scrolling for a book or podcast is a very healthy choice.
Yeah, I've started doing that. I started reading again at night. I was developing some bad habits, which I'll talk about probably in a later podcast episode. But I was developing some habits, not horrible, because I'm not addicted to my phone like some people are, but I was developing some bad habits and I have changed them and they have made a difference. Probably my last thing to say is that, and I think this goes without saying, man, humor helps, right? I mean, you've got to laugh at yourself. And if you have people around you that you can laugh with about this, that can help you put it into perspective, that accept all of the messes of you, I think it's so important. I was talking to somebody recently, and he said a pretty profound thing. He's a guy who's involved in the recovery community. I know him from the gym. He's been sober for a long time now. He's got an interesting story. But we were talking about something, and he said, yeah, connection is the opposite of addiction. He didn't make that up, but I thought, wow, that is a really important thing to keep right inside your
front and center.
Right, front and center. Connection is the opposite of addiction. And so really just make sure that you are surrounded by people who love you, who accept your faults, people who can laugh with you and cry with you, right? I mean, it's important to have those connections.
I would like to say on that note that someone in the Facebook group did share that she hit her kid's car.
I saw that.
Awesome.
I saw that. Yeah, someone else. Thank you. Whoever put that comment in. Thank you so much that they were backing out of the driveway and I guess the daughter was driving in and they smashed together. Yeah. See?
We see you. We know you're feeling overwhelmed. It's okay.
It's okay. You're going to feel this way. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It doesn't mean that there is something wrong with you. That's what I want you to hear. It means you're a human being. It means that it is a tough damn time to be a parent and a human being. It is hard. Yeah.
Well, stay with us for season 6. We have a lot of new exciting things coming and a few different types of shows and show formats, including some guests.
Some of my favorite people in the world. Thanks for listening. And if you found this podcast helpful, please give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It helps other people find this information.
And if you'd like to dig deeper on any of these topics, we have specialized playlists on our Spotify profile, and the link is in the show notes. Topics like teens, depression, and OCD. Bye, Lynn.
Bye, Robin.
Hello, you sentient ball of stardust. My name is Casey Davis. I'm a therapist and I'm an author of the book, How to Keep House While Drowning, where I talk about ways to make it a little bit easier to take care of yourself when you're overwhelmed, stressed, have mental health issues, physical health issues, or maybe you're just in a hard season of life. Maybe you're looking for a place that you can come and listen to some practical advice. This is a podcast for all of the self-help rejects. We're going to talk about skills for survival and self-kindness. And I'm going to leave the pop psychology at the door. I promise not to tell you to meditate or to journal. We're just going to give you some really insightful conversations with hopefully some practical advice. So I don't believe you need to pick yourself up by the bootstraps. I don't want you to just try harder, and I don't believe that laziness exists. So join me over on Struggle Care, where we can find compassionate solutions that help us function a little bit better.